So welcome all to this webinar. So today we're going to talk about selling without selling. And this is going to be a bit of a workshop. So I'm going to walk you through all the different steps. If you're watching the replay, feel free to get in touch. If you're on the call, feel free to put questions in the chat and then I will answer them in the end. In the meantime, I can see people jumping on. Okay, I can also see a couple of you are not managing to find the right link. Do drop me a line in my inbox. Hopefully my assistant will pick it up and send it. So, okay, so let's start off with the agenda. Give me a shout if you can hear me. Excellent. So, okay, so the agenda is going to cover some very just 4 main points. So the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is how to make a discovery call effective. Then we're going to talk about the framework of how to build a discovery call that sells without selling. And I think this is a very important point because one of the things that are very important is that we don't push someone into buying coaching. That's really important. We're going to go through the questions that help the person actually analyze, whether to actually work with us, to understand if they're a good fit, help us understand if they're a good fit. So a discovery call is not just for us, it's also for our clients. Then we're going to look at the skill and GPT. So I'm actually going to give you a tool that is going to help you write your own script based on your target audience. Okay, I can see that there are some people waiting in the room. I'm just going to let them in and then we'll go straight through. Okay, so here we go. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Fiteni. I'm a marketing coach and a business mentor for online coaching. For online coaches, I have a degree in education and I was a web developer for 10 years before I started doing this. And I have a lot of experience in marketing, haven't had my own agency for over 10 years, and then more than 10 years experience coaching coaches building online businesses. So let's dive straight in. So how do you get to close more discovery calls? So one of the main and most important things is that we get more of the right people on the call. Now, this may sound really, really obvious, but getting more of the right people on the call is possibly the most important thing. And of course, today we're gonna talk about building the right script for the right person. But what is going to happen is that we're going to see, obviously, people convert based on how well they are matched to our script. So that requires a little bit of work that you need to do in your marketing. So one of the things you need to do is, of course, making sure that you are attracting the right people to talk to. And by the right people, I mean, obviously, you need to do your business foundations. You're going to hear me talk about this in every single video I do. Your foundations need to be right. You need to know who you're targeting. You need to know your offers. You need to have them well structured, well priced, and you need to have the right messaging. When you have those things aligned, then you can usually do a great job of getting things in order. Okay, so I'm going to couple more people to add. Just going to take a quick thing to add a couple of people. Okay, so so of course, before we start writing our script, it's important to make sure that we are talking to the right people. And what that means is that we are aligning our foundations with our messaging. So we have the right ideal client, the right offers, and the right messaging. If we don't have those things, we might notice that we're attracting a lot of different kinds of people to our discovery calls. Then we get tempted to create new offers. So it can become really difficult to close a discovery call because the foundations are not set. But if you know exactly who you're working with or thereabout, and you're beginning to talk to people even in person, then it can be, the most important missing link, that you actually have a good script that sells without selling. And just like I mentioned just a minute ago, it's very, very important that we do not sell. That's why this workshop is called Sell Without Selling, because I don't believe in selling coaching. It's all about aligning with the right person. And I think also coming across as not selling, because I have heard this many, many times. I've heard a lot of people tell me, I decided to work with you because you were the only one not selling me, because everyone else seems to be so eager to get me to sign the dotted line and just jump in without having the time to even understand what they're selling. So I think it's very important, because nobody wins if someone buys your coaching without being ready. You're not going to win and they're not going to win. So it's losses all around. So it's really important that we assess that the person is ready. And in fact, that's what selling without selling is actually all about. So let's start off with the steps. So if you're going to write down the steps to actually do the script, I am going to give you a tool in the end that will make it a lot easier. But if you want to write down the steps, this is the first one. And the first thing you want to do is create a connection. This is especially important if you're jumping on a call and not meeting someone face to face. So if they've booked a discovery call from your website or from your social media profile, it's very important that you start off by creating a connection. And this means pause a little bit. Don't jump straight into business. It means in certain cases, if you collect information, and I highly recommend that you have a pre-call form. So when they book your discovery call, you actually ask for some information. I will show you an example of one later on when we talk about the toolkit that you need to bring along for your discovery call. But basically, you can collect information about them and then research. Take a look at their website, take a look at their Facebook profile, understand what kind of person they are, so that you already know before they jump on the call, especially if you're very new and you're a bit tense and you're a bit stressed when it comes to discovery calls. It helps you to understand and search up a little bit of information about the person, so that you know who you're going to speak to. You feel a little bit more relaxed. You also know what kind of maybe discussions to strike. You can tell them very openly that you went to their Facebook page and you found this post interesting, or you saw their cute dog, and you can just start off with something that's really friendly. Now, this can be a bit of a double-edged sword, and we're going to see that in the next steps. But definitely, one of the first things is to connect, and also this is going to help you understand how the other person communicates immediately. And I think when it comes to coaching, understanding whether your communication and their communication can actually work, whether you're understanding each other, whether you speak the same language. Okay, so let's go to the next step. So the first thing you need to do, extremely important, is frame the call. And framing the call can be as easy as asking the first question. Sometimes you're going to find people who are very strong characters, and they're going to jump in and they're going to want to take the lead. When that happens, it's very unlikely that you're going to make a sale. So it's really important that you kind of frame the call and you help people understand that you are the person in control. And you do that generally by asking the first questions. And also by letting them know how the call is going to be broken down. So you say, okay, so, this is how the call is going to work. Sometimes you're going to find people who have never been coached before. So not only do they not know how a coaching relationship works, they don't even know how a discovery call works. So it's very important to say, hey, once you have warmed up a little bit, you say, I'm going to ask you a few questions. It's fine. I just need to know a little bit of information about you in order to understand, that we're a good match. And then you can also preempt and say, in the end, we can discuss, if there's any of my offers that are a good fit for you or that you're interested in. It can help you talk about that in the beginning, especially if you're a little bit price shy, because it can be hard for some people to then do sort of the step to actually talk about the pricing in the end. One of the most important things, though, is that although you're going to take the lead and you're going to ask the questions, you don't want it to sound like an interrogation, which means that when a person answers the question, don't just jump in with another question right away. You want to give them space to really express themselves and to really go with the flow. So very often what I find is that if after a question you stay silent and you give them enough space, they're going to give you more information. And when it comes to coaching, this is really important. You have to allow people to go as deep as they can. You have to also remember that is the first time they're talking to you, probably. So you really need to give them as much space as possible and, help them understand, again, the kind of dynamic that you bring, because of course, the first conversation is kind of when they're also understanding how things would work with you inside the session. Okay, so after framing the call and basically taking the reins of the call, saying, okay, this is how it's going to work, and this is sort of what a discovery call really is, you want to go to the first and most important thing and understand why they came to you. So you may ask them, why did you book the call, or why are you interested? If you're talking to someone face to face, they may have shown you interest about some particular topic you are talking about. So what you want to do is you want to go deeper on that particular topic, and you want to ask them what interests them. You want to find out what they believe you can help them solve, because usually people come to you for a discovery call after they've read 2, 3, 4 pages on your website. Maybe they've read a blog post, maybe they've read a social media post, and they may just know a little part of what you can offer. So you need to understand what they think you can help them with so that you can help guide them and then really help them understand sort of the whole spectrum that you can work with them, the whole spectrum that you can help them with, because very often they're going to understand just the slides. And another thing is, if you're a new coach and you're finding that a lot of leads and a lot of people talking to you are misunderstanding your offer, or not quite understanding what you're doing, this is a signal that you need to fix your messaging, or you need to fix the way your website is structured and titled so that people can understand you a little bit better. So again, a very important thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the information in your discovery call, especially when you're talking about getting your first 20 to 50 clients, the information that you collect from your discovery calls, that is gold, because that is going to help you gauge how people are perceiving you. It's going to help you gauge which of your blog posts, which of your topics are actually generating the leads. So try to log as much information as possible, even using a pre-call questionnaire. Okay, so understanding where they are and where they want to go, this is the first and most important thing. You need to explore the current situation. So obviously they're going to tell you why they wanted to work with you, why they wanted to talk to you, and sort of what was the initial thing that made them speak to you. And then from there, you can quite easily pivot into, okay, so before, we can talk about how I can help you, or, I need to understand a little bit more about you. Would you sort of let me know a little bit more about your current situation? And you go a little bit deeper, you leave quite a lot of silence, ideally, and use a little bit of, lighter coaching questions, not interrogation style, if they need help finding the answer. The next thing you want to do is decide whether you actually can help. And this should ideally happen before the 20-minute mark. I'm a big fan of shorter discovery calls, 30-minute ones, but I always leave a buffer. So if I'm having a discovery call with someone who I know is a good match, I want to allow myself a full hour to talk to them. But I do want to have the option to jump off the call after 20 to 30 minutes with someone who I feel is not a good match. It doesn't mean I'm going to help them. I will very often, if I understand that they're not a good match, I'm going to coach them, or I'm going to lead them to find an alternative. I'm going to help them actually find what is the real solution to their problem. But I will not stay on. So one of the first things that I want to find at this point is I'm going to ask a few more questions so that I can understand whether I can really help them, because they might want the outcome that I give, but they don't want to reach it the way I teach it. So for instance, they might want more leads, but they just want a TikTok ads funnel, which is something I don't do. So they may want specifically that. So in that case, I would immediately understand, listen, I cannot help you, but potentially here's a couple of TikTok coaches I can refer you to. So it's very important to understand at quite an early stage what you can help them with. The next stage is going to be, once you understand, obviously you want to explain your approach, because sometimes, like I said, they might want the solution to their struggle, but not through your approach. And then there's going to be the people in the middle who don't know enough about what to resolve and how to resolve their struggles. And you will need to lead them and potentially coach them a little bit into understanding how they would want to approach this. Now, of course, there are also coaches who have a very set and fixed signature process. And of course, this would be the actual right time for you to actually explain how your signature process works and how flexible it is, because a lot of coaching clients want to know how flexible you are as well. And of course, you also need to discuss the pricing and the payment options as openly as possible. However, you have to wait for the right time to do this. So the right time to actually talk about the pricing is when you have spoken about the struggle. So these are the three most important steps. We're going to review them again in the questions a little bit later. The three most important steps are to get them back in touch with their struggle, to understand whether you can help them and explain your approach, and then to allow a natural transition into them asking, okay, so how can you help me? What do your packages look like? So generally, after we have actually explained how we help people and maybe gone deeper on their struggle, maybe done a slight little bit of coaching, never too much, because sometimes people can be oversatisfied with the discovery call and they then decide not to move on. So you still, need to make them feel like, obviously, the problem is definitely not solved. We've understood the problem, but we haven't started solving it. And then you want to leave as much space, as much silence as possible, so that they are the ones to actually ask you, okay, so what's the pricing like? What do you have payment options? What does the package look like? In some cases, I would say 10 to 20% of the cases, they will not ask. They will just wait for you to say something like, would you like me to explain how you could work with me? Or is that something you're interested in right now? So you can ask that question. But most of the time, the people, if you give them enough space, they're going to transition into that question anyway. There are going to be some people who have jumped on the call purely to pick your brain, but usually you will have found who they are in the first half of the discovery call. The next thing is the follow-up. And this is something that a lot of coaches really struggle with. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, but quite often, okay, there are quite a lot of people who actually buy on the call. That is not going to be rare. There will be people who just want to buy on the call. That's the kind of person they are. But then there's going to be people who either are shopping around. Maybe they're going to talk to other coaches. Maybe they're not sure. They have to ask their spouse if they're going to spend X amount of money. Maybe there are people who, need to discuss this with their partner before they actually make a decision. So you're going to find all kinds of people. So being able to send follow-up and following up often is going to be a very important part of the process. if we look at sales generally, and I've done a lot of sales in my life, starting off as actually in my teen years, one of my first jobs, I was trained by a local American company, and I was a door-to-door salesperson selling door-to-door stuff, which was probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. Also, one of the most lucrative things for a person that age. But also, I've done also a lot of service selling in the agency. And what I find is obviously, if you look at the statistics and also if you look at the efforts you make, you'll be able to see this yourself. A lot of the close is actually in the follow-up. Statistics actually show that the average person buys on the fifth follow-up, especially when we're talking about services. And I see this definitely very much from myself, because what tends to happen is I'm actually very grateful when people remind me, because maybe I had acquired about something and I actually intended to buy it, but it kind of gets postponed because, your inbox gets busy. So the right person will actually be very thankful that you keep following up. So make sure that you send a clear follow-up email. I'm going to give you some examples of that. Even better, actually, I have trained the GPT and the cloud skill that I'm going to share with you later to actually give you these follow-up emails based on the templates. I'm also going to show you mine. But one very important thing is to send the clear follow-up email with your packages PDF. So you want to have a PDF that actually explains clearly all the packages, including the pricing and the payment terms and all the information included, ideally also with the payment link. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a template email to send it quickly after the discovery call. You definitely don't want to be pushy in your email. You do sometimes get coaches that create fake urgency, as in, I only have 2 slots left, I only have 5 slots left. When that is true, obviously say it. I have been in that position myself when my slots, I've had a few discovery calls and I don't have too many slots left. I will let the person know. But otherwise, I'm not going to inject fake urgency. And I think that's part of the authenticity and also the selling without selling. These things are important, but only use them if they are real. And again, of course, you want to follow up more or less every 5 days after the first follow-up so that the person doesn't forget about you, but you don't want to be too pedantic and do it too often. Okay, so here are some questions, some examples of questions that you might write in your script. And this is probably the core of what makes a script actually close a client without having to sell. And basically what we're doing is we're trying to rebuild the tension that actually made them book the discovery call in the first place. See, one of the main reasons why people book discovery calls and then don't buy is a couple. So first of all, there's the ones that maybe there was a little bit too much time between when they booked the discovery call and when it actually happened, because sometimes they even forget how they were feeling at the time, and maybe the urgency has gone. Or else, obviously, there's also because on the call, then you didn't help them reconnect with that feeling of urgency, the tension that actually made them book the call. So here are a few questions that you can actually add to your script. We've mentioned some before. They're part of the steps. Why did you book the call? Where are you right now? So in terms of, if you're a business coach, in terms of the business, if you're, if they're in a particular stage of their life, you ask them how they're feeling and sort of what the situation in their life or their career looks like. What they're struggling with, very important. What is this thing you want not happening? So usually when they come to you, there's something, obviously don't say it this way, you've got to frame the real thing. But if they come to you with a struggle, for instance, in my case, what is the thing they don't want happening? They don't want to be wasting a lot of time marketing and not getting leads. Or they don't want to, let's see, let's say you're an executive coach and they don't want to spend a lot of money on team training, for instance. They want to make sure that they're building a strong company brand, and they want to have some sort of assessment and team coaching. So it's important that you clearly understand and ask them what they want to happen. And then you want to ask them what happens if nothing changes. So what are we doing here? So what we're doing is we're actually help them create these images in their head of what of the struggle. So they're reconnecting with the pain. They're kind of imagining in different ways how it feels for things to not change, for them to keep staying in this problem. And you want to then emphasize the time. So how long have you been in this? What have you tried already? So this feeling of frustration. They've tried something before and it hasn't worked. And then you ask them what's stopping them from solving this by themselves. This is actually a very good coaching question for them. A lot of people need quite a bit of space to answer this because they don't have an immediate answer, but helps them go a little bit deeper and connect with the actual reason why they might need to actually work with a coach. And then you want to guide them to a place of what will their life look like once it is resolved. And this is very important because they need to connect with the pain and then also connect with the vision of the solution. What this does mentally, it actually helps them slowly sort of come to the acceptance that actually this problem, in spite of sort of how deep it has gone, how long it's been there, it's actually doable. They can imagine life without this problem. The next question, which is not here actually, and is a very crucial one, which actually really helps you close the call, is to then bridge the gap and say, okay, so if you had to do this, if you had to really go for the solution, if you really had to go for the coaching, when would you want to do this? And this actually takes the vision of what it could look like a little step further. So what they're doing now is they're actually imagining working towards that vision with you. And building the sequence of visual images actually helps them understand and helps them really feel whether they are ready. If they are ready, they are going to move, they're going to reconnect with the tension, they're going to reconnect with their why, and they're going to make a decision. Of course, there are people who have objections, there are people who may need a little bit more time. But obviously, with the information you've collected on the discovery call, you can then take them to the next stage. Okay, so what needs to go in your sales toolkit? And I've added this slide actually because one of the things I find is that more than the actual framework of the discovery call, when I start working with people and they cannot close their discovery calls, okay, the script makes them feel calmer and makes them feel, great because they've got something to follow. But they feel a little bit on edge because they don't have a place where they have their toolkit ready. So if they have to jump on a call, they've got everything there. And here's what you need to have in your sales toolkit. So you want to have a place, and this can be as simple as a Google Doc with the links to everything that you need. So you want to have a script. And I also like to have, by now, I have like a tiny script, which is like a summary, which is basically just the most important 4 or 5 questions I should not forget. So you can have a long script to, follow if you need to, but over time, once you've done that a few times, you can actually summarize that script. So you've got the full script, you've got the script summary, you've got the payment links, very important, because if people ask you for the payment and you're scrambling around to find the links, it can be very frustrating for them, and you could actually lose the sale because they might say, okay, I'll pay later, and then they never buy. So you want to have them very readily available, a booking calendar, because maybe they don't want to pay on the call, but they're ready, they know they want to move on. So you can just share the link so they can book the first coaching call or their onboarding call. And what this does is kind of locks in the sale without the payment yet, but there's like a promise. Then you want to have your follow-up email templates. You want to have them with you so you send them very quickly after the call. You want to have a PDF with your coaching packages so that you can actually, especially in the beginning, when you kind of flounder a little bit, you want to have a PDF so that you can share it with them on screen and you can show them the different payment terms. You can remember all the figures of all the different packages. You have all the details. And then this email doubles up. This PDF doubles up as something to send an email as a follow-up so that they can review what you mentioned on the call. You can also send them your AI notes these days. If you have an AI note taker, you can actually send them a copy of that if they ask for it. Then you want to also have a blueprint of your process. So if you have a signature program, if you have tools that you like to use, it's good that you create one. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to show you mine. It's good to have one. It's not something you can have from day one. You have to have had enough clients to develop a process that is pretty standardized and have packages based on it. But it could help you when you have clients who need to go sort of to do the whole journey, which might be quite a long coaching program. It does help to have a step-by-step phased process to actually show them. And then a CRM to hold it all. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be a CRM. I have mine in Asana. Or else you can actually have it simply, like I said, on a Google Doc. But what matters is that it is really available. So I'm going to actually show you what these look like. So let's quickly see what these pieces look like for. So this is my Asana. I find I have been using this for quite some time. It basically has the whole process. It's got, obviously, over the years, I have added more content, but there's obviously different scripts. There's the PDFs with the packages, and I can show you an example here. There's obviously different ones that I've seen over the years. So you can see what I cannot seem to zoom. Okay, here, let's see if I can zoom in so you can see it. So it's just a PDF with all the details, including the packages. This is an old one from 2021, so looks a little bit different to the packages that I have now. But basically, it just helps you during the call. And it helps you also as a follow-up, you attach it to the email. And then you can always mention which package you're recommending. Again, very important. Unfortunately, it's not something that goes really in our script, but once you know which package would really suit the person you're talking to, it's important to make a recommendation and say, I think this one is perfect for you. And in fact, you should also then mention it in the follow-up email if possible. Okay, so let's have a quick look. Okay, so here is another part of the toolkit. This is the one I mentioned before, which is the form. This is my most recent iteration of the form that people actually fill in after they book a discovery call. And there's a couple of things obviously that I need to know because it's related to marketing. So their Instagram. I also want to know how much they're making because their goals are usually connected to their revenue. And then there's a couple of qualifying questions where basically I want to understand if this person can actually buy, if they make the decision to buy, if they can buy, and if they're used to making this kind of investment. So what you need to think in reality is that these questions are kind of similar to the questions you ask on the discovery call as well. In fact, a good way to do it once you have your script is to get your key questions that you would ask on the discovery call and put them in your booking form. Because then what you can do is, especially when you're stressed in the beginning, you're not used to calls, you can actually go through the discovery call booking form and just go deeper on the answers of each question. And that way you're kind of making the client think upon booking about these things. You're kind of already going through the process. And then obviously you can go much deeper in the discovery call. Okay, and then let's see, I wanted to show you the blueprint as well. So let's see if I can find that in my Asana, and I'll also show you the follow-up emails. So let's see. Here it is. So here's my blueprint. So the blueprint looks something like this. It's just an image. And it just explains the different phases that I help people with. It explains all the things they need to have in place in a way. So, if they're starting from phase 3, they need to have phase 1 and phase 2 in place. So it helps people understand where they're starting from and where they're going when they do the whole journey. It really helps to have different types of touch points, like something that's maybe a bit more visual and something that has all the information, like the PDF with the packages, because people have different ways of learning. Obviously, you will explain in detail, and there's people, who are auditory, there's people who are more visual, and there's people who are very happy to just read every single word on the page and are very thorough. So you need to give people with all these different sort of styles of absorbing information, you need to give them all the format that they need. Okay, so here I have then the payment links, which I keep ready. And then I have the follow-up emails. So I keep them all here stored up. I have different ones and I just copy and paste my template and of course, customize it for that particular person. It's very tempting to paste it into AI and say, oh, would you write it for me? But I highly do not recommend that. You ideally want to use the client's words. You want to show them that you are listening. You want to show them that you already have ideas on how to customize the program for them and you know exactly which one is right for them. So you definitely want to make sure that it's not an AI written email and that it feels personal. And that, you send them all the information. For instance, as you can see, there's different follow-ups here. There are people who are more interested in which package is the best for them. There's the ones where I've recommended some customization. There's this one is more interested in the pricing. So I had given her a breakdown for the payment plan, whatever is the biggest concern or the things that you discussed, very important that they go in your email. Okay, so what am I going to give you next? So in the chat, I'm going to actually share with you the files for the skill and also the prompt for ChatGPT. So let's start off with the skill. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so if you go to Claude, you can just go to so remember what the button is called. Just you go to customize, you go to your skills, you go add new skill, and you can just upload the skill.md. I recommend calling it Discovery Call Script Creator. It's going to ask you questions when you create it. It's going to ask you questions and it will help you then create the script. If you have issues or there is something that you're not satisfied with, feel free to drop me a line and I'll be very happy to check it out. It hasn't been extensively tested, but it has been trained on all the templates and all the things that we have seen. So obviously I've tested it a couple of times, but obviously it's great once it gets tested on all the different ideal clients so that we can see that it works for everyone. And then I also have the ChatGPT script, which I'm going to upload as a PDF because I've already downloaded that one. And of course, they will be in the follow-up email, so you don't have to necessarily get them from the chat. So if like few of you jumped off earlier in the call, because you can just get them in the email that will follow up. If you're watching the replay, you can definitely see the links underneath this video. Okay, so just one last thing I wanted to mention to you. If you have questions, now is the time to pop them into the chat. and we can go deeper on any of the points mentioned. I created a small offer for the people who are watching this discovery call training, and basically it's a small 10% summit discount. It's something I usually just run for a couple of weeks on the foundations, which is my smallest package, obviously, since it's the one that really helps your discovery calls. That's the one I believe you should definitely use it for. And then there's a profitable content package, which is my longest coaching package. So if you're interested in that, you can get a discount on that one too. So let's quickly check for questions. Okay, so we don't seem to have any questions today. That's great. So I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you very much for being with me. If you're watching the replay and you need, I can see someone joined now by mistake. So if you're watching the replay, and I know that some of you might be watching the second half or just the first half, that's perfectly fine. Just you can drop me an email on info@stephaniefitani if you have questions, or some of you have me already connected on WhatsApp. In the meantime, lots of good luck with your discovery calls. If you need anything, you know where to find me.